here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is rest and regeneration. And what we're really talking about today is connecting with the intelligence of the body and paying attention. So before we get started in what should be an interesting conversation, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, we're talking about the body's intelligence, and it actually gives us an entree into a conversation of not only the body's intelligence, but our own emotional intelligence and the intelligence of our emotional being. And both body and being, or both body and emotion, are expressions of ourselves that we are taught to ignore or override or overpower or just try to make it go away. We feel uncomfortable emotionally and we just want it to stop. We have a sensation of pain and we just want it to stop. And so we take drugs or we do any number of things to make these sensations go away without actually engaging with the intelligence that is behind them. And I can understand being in discomfort and just wanting the pain to go away emotionally, physically, the whole thing. I can certainly understand it. I've been there. And there's an opportunity available to us when we listen, when we pay more attention, when we get curious, to say, okay, well, what's that sensation like? Where is it? Where is it radiating from? What's the pattern of the energy that is creating that sensation? Because we truly are energetic beings, and our emotions are energy in motion. Sensations of pain are also energetic. And when we allow ourselves to listen, there's huge potential for communications that will shift our way of being, that will shift our perspective, that will shift our experience, not only of life, but of our physicalness, of our emotions, of our human experience. So this conversation is coming about because I'm feeling a bit under the weather. And so it's inviting me to look, what's the opportunity? Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you joining us this morning. we're talking about rest and recuperation. And really, what we're talking about is listening to our body and our emotions and our intuition. Um, I had a really interesting conversation the other day where a client was talking about having had the experience of betrayal. And I think when we get sick, we often can feel like our body has betrayed us. And I don't know that this conversation maps to the betrayal experience, but we'll see. So, in our conversation, what we were able to expose is that what was being called betrayal, just by the very dynamic of it, has an element of victimhood to it, right? If you betrayed me, you've done something to me. And ultimately, when we look at that betrayal, what we're looking at is a breach of trust, right? Maybe we both had an agreement, and maybe it was never actually a formal agreement. Maybe it was never actually, maybe it was more of an assumed alignment or agreement than an actual agreement. But when somebody doesn't hold up their end of the agreement, assumed or otherwise, we can potentially have an experience of betrayal. And certainly what happens is that the trust gets broken. And I think really the way that this ties back to our rest and recuperation conversation is that we get to cultivate a trust with our bodies, with our emotions, to find a space of curiosity when experiencing these different experiences, which we might otherwise interpret as impediments, right? Like if we take the vantage point, if we take the stance of what's the opportunity, the conversation shifts pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. And the insights that arise also transform. So, listening to our body when it's calling for rest and relaxation or rejuvenation, it's not always the easiest thing because it's not necessarily convenient, right? Maybe the body is calling for that recuperation at a time when it's just not convenient. Like you just don't have time. And then the question is, well, what do we do with that? Do we make the time? Do we make the adjustment? Do we modify our expectations of ourselves? Do we find ways to nurture ourselves through the other demands to be able to give ourselves that experience of rest and recuperation? It's an interesting conversation because doing is something that's highly valued in our culture, whereas rest is often denigrated. Rest is often looked at like a weakness. To be able to do self-care is often looked at like a weakness rather than a strength. And this actually reminds me of a conversation. I think we've talked about this already, but I had met a person on the train from New York, and this person's an accomplished artist and entrepreneur. And we were talking about what do you do to nurture yourself? And it set them to considering new possibilities that they hadn't entertained before, and into the realm of rest and recuperation. So by shifting our activities to something that is nurturing, that feeds our heart and soul. And the constant doing, the constant push for doing is something that can be debilitating after a time. It can actually wear away at our health. And that constant pushing is kind of a denial of the communication that our body is trying to give to us. So I have some rest and recuperation in my near future here. But it's interesting to be dancing consciously with our bodies and with the input that we receive, the communication. Like if our body had an intelligence of its own, how would it communicate to us? Through sensation, right? And so the same thing with emotions. If we're looking at our emotional health, how would our emotional being, our emotional body communicate with us? Again, through emotion. And when instead of trying to ignore, excuse me, mm, um, or deny, when we pay attention, when we feel into the sensations, when we allow for the experience, we, we can take the learning. And so I think my body is telling me, okay, time for you to take your own medicine. And so I'm going to take the rest of our scheduled time this morning to just recoup a bit. So, um, perfect example of preaching in action, right? Like, let's be in alignment with ourselves. Thank you, Rosalind. So appreciated. And I just want to let you know what a pleasure and privilege it is to be able to be with you and to share these mornings. So I'm going to call it a morning for today. So much love to you. Until next time.